I think most people don't realize just how often we use humor as a coping mechanism. Like, we do it so instinctively that we don't even stop to question it. Someone dies and someone else makes a joke and everyone kind of laughs through their tears, and it's like, yeah, that's weirdly comforting. Or you're going through a breakup and suddenly you're making TikToks about how you got ghosted harder than a haunted house. That's how we survive things. That's literally how some of us get out of bed. There's this thing about humor that people don't talk about enough, which is that it's one of the most socially acceptable ways to process pain in public. Like, you can't just start sobbing in the middle of a grocery store, but you can say something self-deprecating or darkly funny, and everyone goes, haha, same, and moves on. It's almost like we've collectively agreed that if it's funny, it's fine. And sometimes it is. Humor can be this really powerful tool. I mean, it shifts perspective. When something horrible happens and you're able to turn it into a joke, even just a little one, you've already taken some of the power back. You're not just the victim of something, you're the narrator of it. You're the editor, the stand-up comic, the one who gets the final word. That's a pretty badass way to reframe trauma. But it's not just about control. Humor helps us connect. Think about all your favorite people, your ride or dies, your family members, your coworkers. How many of those relationships are built on shared laughter? When someone else laughs at your weird, awful story, they're kind of saying, yeah, I get it, I've been there. And there's real comfort in that. Even if your circumstances are totally different, that shared reaction means you're not completely alone in the chaos. There's even science behind this, like actual research. Laughing releases dopamine and endorphins, all those happy chemicals. It reduces cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So when you're cracking a joke in the middle of a meltdown, your body is literally calming down. It's like a built-in pressure valve. Laughter lowers the emotional temperature so you can function again. Now, obviously, there's a flip side, because there's always a flip side. Humor can be a shield too. Like, let's be real, some people use it to avoid. You know that friend who can't get serious for more than 2 seconds without making a sarcastic comment? Yeah, sometimes that's just their personality, but other times it's a defense mechanism. It's a way to keep people out. If you're always joking, no one gets to see the actual mess inside, and that's where it gets tricky. Because if you're constantly laughing everything off, you might never actually deal with anything. You just kind of skate on the surface of your life, which can be fun for a while, but then it catches up with you. Like when your therapist says, so let's talk about your abandonment issues, and you're like, ha ha ha, you mean the fun little spice that makes me entertaining at parties? That kind of thing. Humor is helpful, but it's not a substitute for healing. It's also worth saying that not everyone finds the same things funny. What's hilarious to one person might be offensive or jarring to someone else, especially when it comes to personal trauma. So, timing and audience matter. There's a reason why some jokes land at a comedy club and totally bomb at Thanksgiving dinner. It's not about censorship. It's about reading the room. But that said, there are people who've made entire careers out of turning their trauma into comedy, and I love that. Like, look at Robin Williams. The guy was one of the funniest humans alive, and he carried so much pain underneath it. He knew how to channel it into something joyful. Or Hannah Gadsby. Her whole special Nanette was literally a breakdown of how she used comedy to survive, and how she eventually had to stop using it as a mask. Or Richard Pryor. I mean, that man lived through hell and somehow found a way to make it hysterical. That's a skill. That's art, honestly. Even people like Joan Rivers. She went through so much personal loss, and her humor got sharper the more pain she experienced. She was brutal, but that was her way of coping. Or more recently, someone like Bo Burnham, who just unpacks his anxiety and depression through comedy in a way that hits way too close to home for a lot of people. These people aren't just being funny for laughs. They're being funny to survive, to process, to make sense of things that don't make sense, and I think that's kind of the heart of it. Humor is our way of creating order in chaos. Like, if I can laugh about it, I've made it smaller. It's not bigger than me anymore, and that's huge. That's empowering, especially when everything feels out of control. your relationships, your job, the news cycle, your own mental health. Being able to find something, anything, to laugh at becomes a little act of rebellion. But again, balance. It's not all jokes all the time. At some point, you do have to sit with the hard stuff. You can't joke your way into emotional maturity. But humor can be a bridge that gets you there. It can open up the conversation. It can make space for vulnerability, ironically. Like, how many times have you made a joke about something real and then someone goes, "Wait, are you okay?" And suddenly you're talking about the actual issue? That's the power of humor. It's a foot in the door. So yeah, humor isn't everything, but it is something. And for a lot of us, it's the thing that kept us afloat when nothing else did. It's messy, and it's not always healthy, but it's honest. And sometimes, honest is the best we've got. And here's another thing I've noticed. Humor, especially self-deprecating humor, becomes part of your identity if you're not careful. Like, you start off joking about your anxiety or your weird childhood or how emotionally unavailable you are. And then before you know it, you've built a whole personality around being the funny, sad person. Which, sure, it makes you likable and relatable, but it can also box you in because people start to expect it. They expect the joke. They expect you to be okay with your pain because you're so chill about it. And suddenly, the second you try to get serious or vulnerable or say, "Actually, I'm not doing so great," everyone's like, "Wait, what? That's not your brand." And that sucks. That really sucks. Because no matter how witty you are, you're still a person. You still need space to be more than just funny. I think that's part of the con we never really talk about. When humor becomes a trap instead of a tool, and it's so subtle. Like, you're making everyone else laugh. You're diffusing tension in every room you walk into. You're the go-to person for turning any awkward moment into something light. And meanwhile, you're exhausted. You're carrying all this stuff under the surface, and no one sees it, because you've trained them not to. And that can get lonely. And I don't say any of this to discourage people from being funny or using humor to cope. I think it's actually one of the most beautiful parts of being human. Like, how wild is it that we can experience deep, gut-wrenching sadness one minute and then turn around and make a joke about it the next? That's some high-level emotional gymnastics, but it just can't be the only move in your toolkit. Otherwise, it becomes avoidance dressed up as charm. What I've found really powerful, and this is something I've had to learn the hard way, is combining humor with honesty. Not instead of. Like, yes, you can make the joke, but also be real. You can say, "Yeah, I joke about my dating life a lot because I'm genuinely kind of afraid I'm never gonna find someone." And you'd be shocked how many people say, "Oh my God, same." That's where the connection happens. That little space between the laugh and the truth. And by the way, that's where some of the best comedy lives. It's not in the one-liner. It's in that moment where the audience feels the realness and laughs because it's true, not just because it's clever. That's why people like Tig Notaro or Mike Birbiglia hit so hard. They're not just telling jokes. They're telling stories that are rooted in actual vulnerability. And it lands because it's not just funny, it's earned. Even in everyday life, this applies. Like when you're going through something hard, grief, burnout, divorce, whatever, and someone cracks a joke that actually makes you laugh, that moment is gold. It's not dismissing the pain. It's making room for something else to exist alongside it. That little burst of joy, even if it only lasts 5 seconds, that's fuel. That keeps you going. And I think that's something we forget, especially in the era of toxic positivity where everything's like good vibes only. No, life is not only good vibes. Sometimes it's absolute trash vibes. Sometimes it's grief and guilt and screaming into your pillow at 2 a.m. And weirdly, that's where humor shines the brightest. Not as a way to pretend everything's okay, but as a way to say, yeah, this sucks, but I'm still here, and I can still find something to laugh at, somehow. And then there's humor in relationships, which, let's be honest, is crucial. Like, if you can't laugh with someone you love, or laugh at yourself in the middle of a fight, that relationship's probably not going to last very long, because conflict is inevitable. Stress is inevitable. The awkward, unsexy, frustrating parts of being human are inevitable. And if you can't break that tension sometimes with a shared laugh or a dumb inside joke, it gets heavy fast. But again, even in relationships, humor has to come with self-awareness. There's a difference between laughing together and using humor to deflect. If every time your partner says, "Hey, I feel hurt by this," and your response is, "Well, that's because you're soft," that's not funny. That's just avoidance dressed up as wit. You're not resolving anything. You're just creating distance. So, humor's great, but it shouldn't be a wall. You also see this in families, especially families who've been through some stuff. Financial struggles, loss, addiction, whatever. A lot of those families are the funniest people you'll ever meet, because humor becomes part of the culture. It's like, if we can laugh about it, we're not destroyed by it. And that's real. But sometimes, those same families never talk about anything seriously. And that creates generational avoidance. Because no one ever said, "Hey, this was actually really painful." They just said, "Well, at least it gave us character." And, okay, yes, character is cool, but healing is cooler. So I think the sweet spot is being able to do both. To laugh and cry, to make the joke and also have the conversation. To say, "Yeah, I cope with humor, and sometimes that's healthy, and sometimes it's a red flag, and I'm still figuring it out." Because none of us are static. What worked for you at 22 might not work anymore at 35. The way you used to hide behind humor might now be the same tool you use to finally connect. It evolves. You evolve. And if nothing else, I think the fact that we can laugh during the worst of times is proof that we're resilient. That no matter what life throws at us, loss, rejection, burnout, heartbreak, we still find a way to laugh. Maybe not right away, maybe not in a big way, but eventually. The joke comes. The humor finds its way in. And when it does, it's not just funny, it's sacred. It's survival. It's human. So yeah, use humor. Lean into it. Let it be medicine. But also, let yourself feel the stuff underneath. Let people in. Don't be afraid to say, "Yeah, I'm the funny one, but also, this is hard." Because you're allowed to be both. You're allowed to be the comic relief and the main character. You're allowed to laugh through the pain, and you're allowed to cry through the laughter. That's the full experience. That's the realest version of healing I know. And I guess what I'll say, to close this out, is, if you're someone who uses humor to cope, that doesn't mean you're broken or emotionally avoidant or doing it all wrong. It probably just means you've had to figure out how to make life livable. You've found a way to carry the heavy stuff without letting it bury you. That's something to be proud of, honestly. And if you're in a tough spot right now and laughter feels far away, that's okay too. You're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes the humor comes after the storm. Sometimes you have to sit in the mess for a little while before anything about it feels funny. But the moment will come, even if it's just a tiny, ridiculous moment, like your cat knocking over a cup at the worst possible time, or a weirdly specific meme that hits a little too close. That first laugh, however small, that's your spark. That's your comeback story starting. Because life's gonna keep being weird and hard and beautiful and unpredictable. That's kind of the deal. And humor doesn't fix it all, but it helps. It softens the edges. It makes people lean in instead of pulling away. It reminds you that you still have access to joy, even in the middle of the chaos. So if you're laughing through it, keep laughing. If you're crying through it, keep crying. And if you're doing both at the same time, congratulations, you're a fully functioning, emotionally layered human being. That's the goal. That's the real magic. All right, that's it for now. Go be kind to yourself. Go find something to laugh at today. Even if it's just the absurdity of this whole human experience, you're doing better than you think.